The United States was founded on a promise of freedom. It's a word that echoes through its history, its culture, and its very identity. But there's a brutal paradox at the heart of the land of the free, a reality so staggering, it challenges everything that promise stands for. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, but it holds over 20% of the world's prisoners. How did the land of the free become the world's biggest jailer? The answer is a shocking story of fear, politics, and policies that created a crisis on a scale that's almost impossible to imagine. This isn't just a story about individual criminals. It's a story of a system that now holds nearly 2 million people captive. Let's be clear about the numbers, because they are breathtaking. The United States doesn't just lead the world in incarceration. It dwarfs nearly every other nation. With an incarceration rate well over 500 prisoners for every 100,000 residents, it far exceeds other democracies. To put that in perspective, if individual U.S. states were countries, they would occupy 9 of the top 10 spots for the highest incarceration rates in the world. Louisiana's rate is so high, it's second only to El Salvador, a nation in a state of emergency. This system doesn't come cheap. Annually, American taxpayers spend at least $182 billion on corrections and policing. That's billions of dollars diverted from education, healthcare, and infrastructure, all poured into a system of confinement. And the human toll is even more devastating. Today, about 45% of American adults has had an immediate family member in jail or prison. Think about that. Nearly half the country is directly touched by this crisis. The scale of this operation is hard to wrap your head around. We're talking about nearly 2 million people held in over 2,500 state prisons, nearly 100 federal prisons, and thousands of local jails. This didn't happen overnight. In fact, for much of the 20th century, America's incarceration rate was stable and on par with other Western nations. So, what changed? How did a nation that once studied humane punishment turn into the world's leading jailer? To understand that, we have to go back to the 1970s. The explosion of the American prison population began in the 1970s. It wasn't an accident. It was a choice. It was a series of deliberate political decisions fueled by fear and social unrest. Rising crime rates became a central political issue, and a new mantra took hold: tough on crime. President Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs in 1971, a policy that would fundamentally reshape the justice system. This wasn't just about stopping drug use, it was a political strategy. The fear of crime, often subtly linked with race and political speeches, became a powerful tool. The prison population, which stood at around 329,000 when Ronald Reagan took office in 1980, had nearly doubled by the time he left. This era kicked off a wave of punitive laws that sent prison populations soaring. Lawmakers introduced mandatory minimum sentences, which stripped judges of their discretion and forced them to impose long prison terms for specific offenses, especially drug crimes. Before these laws, a federal drug offender might serve under 2 years. By 2005, that average had ballooned to 7 years. Then came three strikes laws, which mandated life sentences for a third felony conviction, no matter how minor the crime. And truth in sentencing laws required prisoners to serve the vast majority, often 85% of their sentences, dramatically slashing the possibility of early release for good behavior. These policies created a one-way ratchet. It became easier than ever to go to prison and harder than ever to get out. The result was a 7-fold increase in the prison population between 1973 and its peak in 2009. The system was designed to grow, and it worked with brutal efficiency. But these policies didn't appear in a vacuum. They were built on, and in turn reinforced, deeper systemic issues that continue to drive mass incarceration today. And if you really want to understand the engine of this system, you have to look at its most defining and disturbing feature: racial disparity. Black Americans make up about 13% of the U.S. population, but they account for 37% of the incarcerated population. A black person is nearly 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white person. And 1 in 3 black boys born today can expect to go to prison in his lifetime, compared to 1 in 17 white boys. These disparities are not a coincidence. They are baked into the system. Studies have shown that people of all races use and sell drugs at similar rates, yet Black individuals are arrested and convicted for drug offenses at far higher rates. Once in the system, the bias continues. Black men receive federal sentences that are, on average, over 13% longer than those for white men convicted of the same crime. This disparity is even more extreme for those serving the longest sentences. Black Americans make up 46% of prisoners who have already served at least 10 years, and a staggering 55% of those serving life without parole. The system's harshest punishments are disproportionately reserved for people of color. A person's criminal history also plays a huge role, creating a revolving door of incarceration. A prior conviction, which is more likely in heavily policed communities of color, almost guarantees a longer sentence for any future offense. This ensures that once someone is caught in the system, it becomes incredibly difficult to escape. Beyond the human cost, there's a massive financial burden that extends far beyond the taxpayer. Families of incarcerated individuals spend thousands of dollars a year on phone calls, commissary, and travel, with Black families bearing more than double the cost due to longer sentences. An estimated 10 million children have an immediate family member in jail or prison, creating a cycle of generational trauma and economic hardship. This entire system, from the courts to the prisons, has become an engine of economic inequality, costing the country billions in lost GDP each year. The sheer scale of this crisis can feel overwhelming, but understanding the problem is the first step toward fixing it. For decades, organizations like the Sentencing Project and the Prison Policy Initiative have been leaders in research and advocacy, shining a light on the data and the human stories behind mass incarceration. If you want to explore the statistics and learn more about the policies driving this crisis, their websites are an invaluable resource. And if you believe these kinds of in-depth explorations are important, please consider subscribing to this channel for more content that questions our world. For a long time, the tough-on-crime narrative went mostly unchallenged. But over the past decade, a powerful and bipartisan consensus has emerged. Mass incarceration is not working. It's financially unsustainable, it has failed to significantly lower crime rates, and it has destroyed countless lives and communities. Even conservative states like Texas have begun rolling back the harsh policies of the 80s and 90s, seeing both crime rates and prison populations fall at the same time. The conversation is finally shifting from punishment to solutions. Experts and advocates are pushing for a multi-pronged approach to dismantle the architecture of mass incarceration. First up is sentencing reform. This means getting rid of mandatory minimums for lower-level crimes and giving judges back the discretion to make sentences that actually fit the offense. For many nonviolent crimes, alternatives like drug treatment, community service, and probation are not only far cheaper but also more effective at preventing people from reoffending. Next, we have to address the extreme length of sentences. Research shows that excessively long prison terms do little to deter crime and can even make it more likely for someone to reoffend after release. Reducing sentence maximums and making these changes retroactive for those already serving long sentences could safely reduce our prison population by hundreds of thousands. Third, the focus must shift from pure punishment to rehabilitation and re-entry. Providing education, job training, and mental health services inside prisons, and supporting people with housing and employment when they get out, is critical to breaking the cycle. Finally, accountability and oversight are essential. Proposals like the Federal Prison Oversight Act aim to bring independent monitoring to federal facilities, while other efforts seek to end or drastically limit the use of solitary confinement, a practice known to cause profound psychological damage. The United States did not become the world's jailer by accident, and it won't cease to be by accident either. It will take sustained effort and a collective will to demand a justice system that is smaller, fairer, and more humane. The story of mass incarceration is a dark chapter in American history, but it's a chapter that is still being written, and we all have a say in how it ends.